Good evening and welcome to Gibson's Bookstore Remote. I am Elizabeth, the events coordinator at Gibson's Bookstore, and I am very pleased to welcome two poets to our store this evening. We are here to discuss and hear from Arisa White's new book of verse, which is Who's Your Daddy?, which is a lyrical, genre-bending coming-of-age tale featuring a queer, Black Guyanese American woman who, while seeking to define her own place in the world, negotiates an estranged relationship with her father. Arisa is a Cave Canem Fellow, Sarah Lawrence College alumna, and MFA graduate from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and author of several poetry chapbooks. She was nominated for Pushcart Prizes in 2005, 2014, 2016, 2018, and 2019, and her poetry has been published widely and is featured on the recording Word with the Jessica Jones Quartet. She is joined in conversation this evening by Dara Wier, who is the author of several collections of poems, most recently In the Still of the Night and You Good Thing. Both of these poets are New England poets. Dara is Lanham and Guggenheim Foundations have supported her writing, as well as National Endowment for the Arts and Massachusetts Cultural Council. Arisa's books are available from Gibson's Bookstore. We have in-store browsing, curbside pickup, and online ordering, and we do ship. We're very happy to have the two of you here tonight. Thank you for joining us. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and just thank you, Gibson's Bookstore, for having us. I'm really excited for this time with Dara. So I will begin by reading a few sections from Who's Your Daddy? Friends never really ask about fathers. To ask is to sometimes signal a personal failure. But when we feel triumphant from figuring out how to play handball with all three of us, it comes up. Nicole, with her round cheeks, dimples dipping into them, undoes and then meticulously fastens the Velcro straps on her Reebok classics. I often wonder, I wonder most. I become a homing signal, an umbilical cord. My father, a rum zero, will never add my expectations, my deepest needs, and the years divide us. She pauses and turns and looks at me and Sophia, our backs against the handball wall. I am watching for that ultramarine sky that marks when I need to be home. Nicole's eyes are asking, is my father some kind of dream reeking of crazy and Old Spice, simply a distance in everything? Maybe we nod. We nod soft so she knows it's not her fault he never came home from the liquor store. Sophia, whose father lives with his other family in Harlem, rolls her eyes, neck, sucks her teeth, inspects her hot pink polish, bites off a hangnail, then spits. He's nothing but a warm brown set of limbs, never thinking, never knowing the appropriate measuring tool to sift his love from them to me. They clock me for my story with a silent impatience of 13-year-olds feeling fresh from sharing, and the sky is telling me to go. I rise up, dust the street off me, and the blood flows to the pins and needles. What? I never had a father. I figured you might know. We laugh something purple from our throats. It rushes forward with many rivers, freely and deep, muddy and ready for the open. My therapist says I've gone from an open field, a complete clearing where earth pauses from making anything tall, to a seed encased in its shell. Our love is a tight squeeze. I disappear by implosion to feel that clearing between the forest of my worlds. I've lost the beauty I've imagined for myself in her critical gaze. My mercurial wit, ludic ways, erotic fire and ice, the shore is giving over to the plea. Please see that I am a parallel truth. Please take care in how you choose to speak to me. I don't know how to ask for this. My therapist says, what is loving about this relationship with Monday Way is your courage to rescue yourselves from being subsumed, bringing light to the dark, dark to light. I attract a person who calls checkmate. Queen, let your heart break, who deals in the invariable facts and energetics of the body, how it's showing up here and now, how it feels, what it needs, and the depth and quality of my body's relationship to itself and others. Wants me to care about these things, to be present and live new stories. Imagine how good that could be. Monday Way says in a voicemail, you can't forgive me until you get inside your heart and grow. At the darkest hour, there is no demand to show, to dissemble, to give. I unhook my breast to spill to gravity, sink into the bath. Orange blossoms stick to my skin like mother's kisses in overdue apologies. The peppermint soap mentholates and constellates my interior. Stars go through the Florida water to shine. Deep breaths open my tight chest, and I feel how running has taken more than given. I rub my heart with the heel of my palm, and my heart stays voicing, find your father. Find what's missing there. Find what is enough. Find yourself whole. Forgive and be forgiven. DIFGHDIFG. DIFGHDIFG. Do I forgive him? Do I forgive? What if the question, what is forgiveness, is my own need to solicit an apology, to put a mouth and throat in all the systems that make a body talk onto something I cannot touch, so it can give me sound that bounces off my contours that let me know I am here, a living beat? What if forgiveness is a matter of breaking up syllables, then arranging the word with a whole new set of feet? What if can you forgive him is a means to end the contrast, is a way to ask our bodies to be proximal? In that asking, I'm proposing that a knowledgeable skill exists, that maybe all the tools we need become real through use. What if this protected reality I made with imagination is let go, and with the release, I've accepted wildness? The proverb says that it's better to have one bird in hand instead of two in the bush. The release will leave me birdless. What if the father isn't the answer, and I've been seeing it all wrong? There is an unequivocal honesty to Gerald's absence. It is reliable and transparent and hasn't done or said otherwise. Can't I see that? What I know is that absence breeds madness, and an irreconcilable relationship you know is there but can't call it by its name can't leave it because it's a tree with its root collar breathing around your neck? What if poetry is how I practice my relationship with my whole body? Bodies unknown and not yet born, bodies past, future bodies, bodies present. The father and mother of my poems are two pearls I nacre at any point in time. And then this is just to kind of give this a little setup. So this is the closing section of the book where, after meeting my father in Guyana, there is this sort of kind of magical moment that happens. And it's like the last night just before I'm to leave Guyana. The moon, bright and ocular, wakes me. The translucent curtains fail to block it. I go to the bathroom and my period has come. Heading back to bed, I hear the Atlantic. It is like Ketur falls in my body. D-I-F-G-H-D-I-F-G. 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 A cock of the rock on the balcony's ledge asked me, "Do you forgive him?" But it is as silent as a traffic cone. The speaking is inside of me. Monday Way is knocked out snoring, and I go to the glass door, part the curtains, and the bird turns from profile to portrait and asks me again, "Do you forgive him?" My body answers by lighting up its beauty marks. My pinky, shoulder, knee, cheek, ear. My panty glow because there's one at the start of my upper thigh, bridge of my foot, between my breast, forearm, and I step onto the balcony to get closer to the cock of the rock, and it flies away. Lands on a tamarind tree across from Hermanston. It repeats the question, and my body responds by casting light upward, matching me to the stars. In my left view, in the distance where the Atlantic is cresting and crashing, another set of light strings shine down, the way dew dapples a web and you know it's there. The cock of the rock says, "Keep walking forward." Above treetops, phone wires, no people out, and wind sweeping the streets. I'm one step at a time, imagining a tightrope between me and those strings of lights. I relax into my natural gait and wonder, what's this conjunction I'm on? And the bird responds, "Forgiveness." When it came to the conjunction "and," I was illiterate, for it makes you larger, more, expands into distances beyond my eyes. It coordinated in my throat, left feet, knob-kneed mortar. It expressed itself like a stiffening gurgle, and all my sound was shamed, stopped, and made no sense to me. It is alien as A turning I, but should we not see the first letter of our name in I? I could not give "and" my tongue, have it used to connect more than two elements together in a chain. Whose body is linking itself to me? Just beyond the seawall, I see the silhouette of my father's body against the dark, urgent waters, and wind overcomes our sound. My feet meet sand. Gerald is kneeling on a water lily. To the right and left of him, petals hold a pile of bones. His eyes are missing eyes, instead an atmosphere of speckled Vanta darkness, swirls of dense gray clouds. in each hand a black pearl. His stare is directed towards the horizon where the day will break. His voice finds me, says, I for truth love Denise, and that is the living thing between us. Wet with his tears, his face shape shifts from young to old, from the old man I know to the face my mother loved, to the boy waiting for his father. The cock of the rock tells me, then he will rest. This is the meal I'm to fix my father. The feast for his eyes is his own father's face. With his tears, I wash Gerald's hands and feet, which are my own hands and feet. I collect the pile of bones, leaving 2 bones behind. Grab a discarded plastic bottle and confront the water. I feed the Atlantic 12 bones, and each time a bone strikes the surface and descends, my uterus feels the discomfort of discharging. The surf encircles my ankles in foam while I gather the ocean in the bottle. Although just a liter in volume, it holds the gravitas of answers unspoken. Since my heart is strongest, I carry the bottle in my left hand. Starting east, I pour a circle around Gerald. His feet turn skyward. The constellation of beauty marks on his soles is bright in the night. We are where we're supposed to be, looking like an inverted 7, ebony and complete. Gerald becomes an island surrounded by his father's salt. I close my eyes and read the Atlantic for my grandfather. Opulent blue, dendrites resurrected, ballots and chains, shadow agreements, shocking leagues, sugarcane and black-eyed peas, seashore and rum shots, waves aggress. A mountain moves before my eyes, and the wind delivers Gerald's voice to me. My mother said he never come home. This negative is my grand absence before my life began. Like 80,000 river gallons making one single drop in me, I say, arise. Gerald Bastian Nareed, my father who is your namesake, hear me too. This is enough. I am water, I am fish, I am daughter of Nareed, and you and I are I and I, we are stars and I stargate. Fathers, be rescued from a toxic masculinity. You fed yourself to a system, caught no fish, not a yucca to boil, plantain still unpicked, your chromosome a shriveled offering, your hunt has not met our hunger. Who are you fodder for? Fathers, be rescued. You've abandoned loyalty to the mother, have divided us to the last nerve, have distributed our power amongst yourselves, have lost connection to earth when you left your serpentine signature in sand. Fathers, be rescued. Your hunt has not met our hunger. The Atlantic responds with an ovation of bioluminescence. When it dies down, I expand my father's circle, sit butterfly alongside him in the affinity I've drawn. Inhale the Atlantic's ichor until my solar plexus is lit, booty anchored. Exhale my crown to shine. I chant LMNOP, LMNOP. Lumen OP, Lumen OP, light open, light open. The stars rearrange, our strings intertwine. And the cock of the rock snatches the pearls from Gerald's hands, flies spiral around the macrame of our lights, and as it ascends in altitude, our stars make the Father's face. We look up, and Gerald sees Gerald. From old to young, the graying man I met in Georgetown this week falls supine onto the sand, and I place a bone on his chest. The charming 20-something my mother loved falls supine onto the sand, and I place a bone on his chest. And the boy who waited for 55 years to see his father closes his eyes and falls into a man. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of that. And I think we all want to give you an ovation of bioluminescence.
That's great. It would be great if we can all just light up like that, you know?
I know, right? I know. That's so great. Well, so is it okay if I ask you some questions?
Yeah, please do. I'm ready.
Okay. Well, it's going to take me a little bit to probably warm up to what I really want to ask you, but I'll try to like move into it for, I hope, all of us who are here listening. Um, you know, one thing that's fascinating to me, I love this book so much. When I first read it, it moved my heart and soul giantly. And I, I want to talk a little bit about how the authority of true life, so that it being cast as a true story, which it is, affects both how you write it and how readers read it. So when you say this really happened, it has the authority of making me, and I imagine many other people, immediately take a second look, a deeper look. The veil of fiction is removed
Mm-hmm.
from the activity, and I wonder how that affected you when you were writing this real story that is yours.
So this question of authority around, um, it was, I mean, it was such a journey to get to that place of feeling like an authority of this aspect of my life. And I think I had to build up that level of confidence, and which is why it took like 7 years to write, and sort of went through these different um, iterations and invited community members to sort of come in and answer this question of like, who's your daddy, who's father, what is father.
Uh-huh.
So I think one of the ways in which that authority just sort of strengthened was learning that I wasn't alone in this question of fatherlessness, that so many people were dealing with absent fathers, or fathers who were there but just never present and involved in the emotional caretaking of their lives. So there was all of these different degrees of people negotiating the distance of father in their life. And so I started to realize that the I that I was writing out of wasn't just personal, it was also communal.
Yeah.
And so instead of the I feeling like a navel gazing pursuit, it became more like a gear shift. So it was like a way for me to look that way, expand outward, to sort of anchor myself in this very personal question and this kind of personal journey, but realize that I wasn't alone in it. And that in itself gave me the space to bring in other voices, right? So that first piece I read is a kind of collage piece of letters and sort of poems that people wrote in response to a call for submission I put out, where I was like, send me your letters. And
Right.
people sent poems. And then I did some community-based workshops where I held space for people to write epistolary poems to patriarchal figures. And this was during the 2016 election too. So everyone had a lot to say about invisible governance and our presidents. So in that way, I started to recognize that my eye, both optic eye and narrative eye, didn't need to be singular. It could be like multimodal or like multilingual in some way, that it can hold the echoes and borrow and cite and collage, because this question of who's your daddy wasn't for me to answer alone. I had to start really in this space of absence. So much things like could enter into it, and I could just renovate my world, like Emily Dickinson says. So even like that last moment, that last section that I read, you know, I had so much doubt about that when I first handed in the manuscript to my publisher, my editor, because I was like, oh my God, this moment is just so, you know, magical and weird, or it just doesn't quite fit with this like memoirs, be real, like narrative, but it felt real, you know? And so, and kind of even reading about like Afrofuturism and just rethinking time and how time operates and not in this linear function. So once I got out of this linear narrative, everything was real, everything was possible. And so that's when I actually felt like I can do this. This feels far more exciting than just like writing about my life in this sort of linear way. But how can I offer the spiral? How can I offer this communal eye and construct that on the page?
Well, I think that by doing all the things you just described, I think it was a genius stroke to bring in other people to talk about this early on, because that does give you exactly what you described. That's really beautiful. And time is something that I thought about a lot both times I read this book recently,
Mm-hmm.
was that it's doing things that are in a complicated, beautiful way where like there are dates on sections,
Yes.
so that says stamp, this is real, this is the
Mm-hmm.
day this happened, you know. And yet the overall effect of time in the book is that it's a completely fluid action and experience that we all share,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's past time is experienced as present time becomes so big and
Mm-hmm.
so encompass, you know. It's really very, very, I guess I'd say, generous way to give people a way into time. But I love what you said about when you had the recognition that your eye was also an other eye, or
Mm-hmm.
others, it's an eye that people share.
Yeah.
I think that that's what every book that you read that does something for you gives you, and
Mm-hmm.
understands that, you know. So I really love that. So um so let me ask you a mundane question,
Okay.
which is kind of you say it was 7 years that you would call yourself writing it. You might have thought about writing it before 7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how many different ways did you go about trying to start it or do it before you found the way that you stayed with?
Well, it first started as epistolary poems because my mom's like, I have an address for Gerald in Guyana. Do you want to write him? And I was like, I don't know what to say. Like, you know, the last time my last memory of him was hiding behind a blue door, you know, in the apartment that we had on Fulton Street in Brooklyn when I was a little kid, like, you know, 3 years old. And so that was my last memory. And I just remember this sense of like, just, you know, I don't know if it was fear, but it was just like, this is a stranger hide behind the door, you know? And so that's my image of Gerald, is this sort of blue door in front of my face. So in many ways I had to like come from behind it. And in order to kind of feel strong in doing that, I had to figure out language for myself. And so I was just writing, like just pretending that I was talking to him, and I was giving him sort of reports and dispatches on my life. Like everything became important, which was so interesting because it expanded the way in which I write or think about content. Like most writers, we often, and especially poets, and I hear this a lot from my students, and they're like, I can only write when I'm angry, or or something, like I need some extreme emotion. And so this was like a really good exercise in paying attention to the everyday, in the mundane, in the daily, and not becoming the material of poems. And so that actually became it was just exciting to know that I don't need to be in this extreme state of emotion to write. I can just write about making a cup of tea, or riding the bus and going to the chiropractor, because he knew nothing about me. And so everything became interesting and important. And so that for me just expanded my writing, praxis in so many ways because of that. And so as I was just pulling in and sort of documenting my life, what I was watching on TV, what I was eating, what I was reading, I mean, it was just great. And I started to pull in um, books that I was reading, articles. It was just everything. And so that just gave me language. It just gave me this way to give an alphabet to this distant, quiet, silent language that we had between us. So that was I eventually created like a self-publication of those epistolary poems called Dear Gerald. And I was able to do that actually with a grant. Um, and even that grant just gave me, once again, speaking of authority and that sense of moving forward, because when I proposed this grant, I was like, I'm gonna do a self-publication of these epistolary poems. I'm gonna hold space for other people to write about their fathers and exchange the chapbook for the letters. So it became this sort of, give and take thing. And then the funding also allowed me to travel to Guyana and meet Gerald. So I just felt like this sense of support by this institution to like go and do this, go meet your daddy, deal with it. And I think all of those things, they just begin to change. It's like when I got letters from a few inmates at San Quentin, and I just still, I can just see the penmanship, just so beautiful. Just, it looked like just like consistent waves on the page, and just thinking about letter as artifact, and then thinking about how can I include their voices? Because at some point I was thinking to respond to all of the letters as if I was their father. So I knew I was thinking about personification. So I wanted to do something with that. And then when I traveled to Guyana and I kept the travel notebook, I kept newspapers, there were photographs, there were just things I just kept on documenting in the notebook. And I knew that I wanted to include these elements, but I didn't know how. And it wasn't until I was actually, I was curating this reading series at the Museum of the African Diaspora in San Francisco. And it was being around visual artists for 8 weeks that made me recognize the blue. Like it was all of this like beautiful blue that was in the paintings of, just like South African contemporary artists. That was the exhibit specifically. And so there was a lot of royal blue, cobalt blue, all of this to sort of represent rivers and the diaspora, the transatlantic slave trade. And then it brought me to that blue door. And so,
oh God.
Yeah, so I started to recognize it was the visual element that helped me begin to connect the sort of poetry, the prose, because out of that time at the museum, I actually wrote what was now the last section of Who's Your Daddy. Like that was the book. And so it was these long sentences, prose blocks, really sort of dense, sometimes argumentative and persuasive pieces. So I was taking on these different registers of voices, which was exciting. And then my editor was like, you need to open this up and include like your childhood and your adolescence. Like, how did you get there? You know, like this is exciting and great, but like, how did you get there? And so that was another challenge to sort of deal with. So it just took on all of these wonderful stages by being open to encounters, you know, like this book, even though it has my name on the cover, was really like co-creative and collaborative, and in the sense of like how much material and experiences I was amassing to kind of create something that was like unique to how I wanted to tell this story.
Well, you know, that when you started talking a few minutes ago, you mentioned the blue door and being a 3-year-old hiding behind that blue door. So when you got to the culminating moment of the blue just now, I was so excited. It was like reading a great book. Hear the whole story of how it happened. That was really great. So now I want to ask you this too. You mentioned alphabet, and you know, there's a DIFGH, DIFG, and other, you know, moments when the alphabet itself looks like it's coming off the page, or that great page that you didn't read where the letters on the page fade away.
Mm-hmm.
So they're graphic interest in the book that are really very, very important and moving, you know. And so tell me a little bit about the alphabet, like in your life.
Oh man, it was total torture. So just kind of thinking about as a younger person, just really struggling with the alphabet. And so I grew up with my stepfather. And so, you know, with this book, as I'm populating this absence of Gerald, I'm recognizing all of the ways in which I've been fatherful, my stepfather, my uncles and cousins and such. And so my stepfather was also Guyanese, and so he would just school me and the morning time over like porridge about my ABCs, and I would have such a hard time, especially when you get to that point when you get to LMNOP. I would just like slur that into like one great sound. And so, but what was also interesting is because my stepfather had this accent, and so there was also like the inability to really get all of his sounds as well. So I'm just thinking about the moment of alphabet and learning language and how to build language from this alphabet is just is fraught with struggle, and it's very much a part. And that's when I also realized, as I was going through my memories, is that language building was very much father for me, and I didn't recognize that because I like growing up with my mom and having that consistent presence, but it was like my stepdad who was there just being like, say your ABCs, Arisa, and say them correctly. So there's that sense of like, you know, like multiple languages, multiple cadences that I'm having to learn to differentiate and learn to sort of sharpen myself against. So there's that. And then also thinking about that particular moment of difficulty for me around the alphabet, the L, M, N, O, P. And there, I was like on YouTube watching some sort of like esoteric stuff on syncretism and on the alphabet. And the alphabet is actually like a portal into the spiritual world, and certain letters represent certain moments of ascendance. And so there was this one video, which I have like an extensive note section in this book, so I kind of cite where it's from. But I was watching this one video, and the guy was like, this moment in the alphabet, the part where I most struggled, is the moment where light opens up. So if you put these letters in, then it was just like this really fascinating way to to recognize this like spiritual element in this primer of some sort, and to like decode it and break it. And so that's what I started to do with language throughout the book. Like it just gave me the permission to play, re-see, reimagine, and to think about our most sort of like basic mundane things is actually the foundation for some larger spiritual growth that can happen if we just pay attention to it and allow ourselves to sort of like play with it. So that's pretty much like the alphabet for me. It was just this way to like move through father language and unleash the light of it, and arrive finally from like A to Z in a way.
Yeah. Well, I think that makes complete sense in terms of how you turn some of the pieces of the book into a kind of ritualized code, or that's like an incantation
Hmm.
that happens. That makes total sense. I love that. And every word in the book is the alphabet, so
Yes,
it's not
exactly.
exactly like as far-fetched in any way. So before we open up to questions from the audience, I think it's probably close to time to do that. Um, Let me ask you one more question, in a general thing, which
Mhm.
is like, do you have any uh, kind of superstitions about how and where and when you compose your
Huh.
work?
I mean, I really like to do it as much as possible, like in quiet. But for the most part, I really don't. I mean, there are times when I know I need to get something out. And so that's when my time is really most structured. So with even the writing of Who's Your Daddy, just before I moved to Maine, when I found out I got the position at Colby College, I was um I was teaching at Mills College as a visiting professor. And I said to myself, if I don't get a draft of this out before I move to Maine, I don't think it's going to happen. Just as we all know how stressful like moving is. So imagine going from California to Maine. So what I did during that time is that after teaching class, I would sit for like 2 to 4 hours in the sunlight and just write. And I pumped out first manuscript, April, it was like April 2018. And then a few months later, we were on the road to Maine. So whenever like it's clear to me, like I just sort of feel full with an idea, I have to make sort of this like really sort of regimented, structured time to just like show up for the muse and just get it out, get it out, get it out. And so I'll do a retreat or anything like that. But mostly I just have notebooks everywhere, in my office, in the living room, in the kitchen. There's always something for me to write my ideas down. um, I feel honestly like a poem is always happening. So it's just a matter of me like tapping in that moment, getting what I need, and you know, and that be it. But ultimately, it's just really about honor. Like for me, it's just about having a notebook on me at all times, because I almost feel like my wallet is missing if I don't have a notebook or something.
That makes total sense. That's great. So shall we see if anybody has any questions for Arisa?
Yeah.
We do have an audience question here. Stephen asks, thank you so much for your honesty and bravery, Ms. White. These excerpts are stirring for me. I recently forgave my father for the violence he perpetrated on me. I'm trying every day not to hate him, and I've realized that forgiveness is an ongoing conversation as opposed to a one-off. I would love your thoughts on this, Ms. White, and how you navigated your journey of forgiveness.
I totally agree. It is not one off. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I remember I wrote an email to you, Dara, about forgiveness and like how do you forgive? And I think you wrote back saying something about it being ongoing and that it's not a destination. And so with that in mind, I think like this whole journey of meeting my father made me realize that we like how much we function in this binary thinking, this sort of moralistic right or wrong. And then and in that particular way of thinking, it's very linear. We almost feel as if like if I do this, it will lead to this, and therefore it will be done. And it's not. It's so messy. It's so circular. There are times when an aspect of it feels like it's done and healed and reconciled. But then if you just shift a little, there's another component in which you need to deal with. And that's why I just think like once you sort of like recognize what it is that you want to give attention to, you will be giving attention to it, I feel, for like the rest of your life. Like every encounter is going to be a way for you to unlock the way in which you're knotted up with that thing. Every book, every conversation, every drink of water is going to sort of release something, release the tension that keeps you bound there. And I think if you're just receptive to being to that level of let go and to that kind of healing that can happen in this sort of 360 way, then forgiveness feels possible, because it feels too like you've opened up a space for yourself to be more human, to like, show off your elbows and stretch your arms and legs. Because really in the end, it's about what are you giving yourself. And I think that's the other reason why I did that incantation around forgive, because there's that word give in there, and then there's the word for, and it starts to feel like a gift, like when you're writing to Arisa from Dara, it starts to feel like the word has this kind of like receptivity, and there's an exchange that has to happen. So, and the exchange doesn't mean the other person has to give you things. Like you can be, that forgiveness can be practiced through so many other relationships. Just like, just sort of a lot of my intimate dynamics help me heal the things that I didn't think I, was going to heal by being in relationship with this person. So I really just think it's a process. It's a process of letting go and really feeling what it feels like to let go, because you have to let go of so much when things get shifted and readjusted. So, and also just have a lot of support around you, people who are doing similar work who can assist you as well. And because when you're, doing healing work, it's good to be around other people doing it as well, just so you can have someone to just bump up ideas and feel with.
Yeah.
That's an excellent answer. Thank you for that. Vin asks or says, that first piece you read made me look at how we look at each other based on who that missing person is. The grand absence and what is present despite the absence, the questioning, the wondering about judgment from each other, the search for trust, and then the decision to trust and dive in. I loved that as an invocation to us all, and it parallels the light to open up at the end. It also seems to parallel the role of the poet as medium and voice and questioner. Such a great thought for the teaching of poetry as an exploration. Are there particular approaches to the listening, to hearing those letters or responses from others that you have found most important and most powerful, or something that you found in your teaching that seems to resonate with students?
Okay, I'm trying to find the question in that. Wait.
Are there particular approaches to the listening to hear
Okay.
letters that you found most important or powerful?
What was most powerful was holding space for people to speak about these things. So if say like the workshop is a listening space, by allowing people to come in, sink into their own quiet, sink into their own bodies, where the story is just sort of percolating or the herd is just nodding up, that is the listening. The listening isn't me hearing them. The listening is the person hearing themselves enough so that they can then articulate that to other people, put it on a page, write a poem. So that's what I often create for my students and for myself, is just the space to quiet down and feel our bodies. And in that feeling, we are doing some deep listening on so many levels, inside of ourselves, outside of ourselves, and bringing those different sounds into the language and expression that is most necessary to make themselves just sort of feel better, to just create space for them to be able to hear themselves better later on. Yeah.
I like what you say about holding space for other people to have a chance to join and say what they have to say.
Hmm.
Because that's what a book does, is to
Yeah.
hold space. It invites you in to do that, and be what you said to do. And I think doing it in the process of your writing is a kind of brilliant, generous thing to allow other people to say, I can speak in here too.
Hmm.
There's a place for me here. I have it for to be heard and to try. Just
Yeah.
I so good. That's really, really important.
Sophia asks, who are some of your literary influences?
Dara Wier, for one. Dara, it's so very true, because the way in which you angle your narratives, your narrators and poems, is just so strange and interesting. And I've learned from you how to really kind of position the eye in some fresh and surprising ways. Um, and then also just like a balance between, I like that conversational and that aphoristic voice, which I love, which is also then coupled with a like humor and a wit too, which is really nice. So Dara, um, Rebecca Seiferly, Audre Lorde. I've been returning to the Irish poet Maeve McGuckian recently. There's something about the density of her metaphors that feel right during this time. There's a lot of us are all sort of struggling with like not having focus, or have it being really difficult to read during this pandemic. And what I found is that I need something really rigorous, so that it goes like it sort of kind of just embeds itself in my system, and then I just spend like the whole day trying to translate it as I'm like cleaning up or going through my day, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I get what that poem was doing. And so yeah, so those are some folks that I've been returning to and revisiting during this time.
So sometimes the act of writing something out changes the nature of the thing. How have your feelings changed now that they're on the page?
They just, they feel my feelings. Like, my feelings, what are my feelings? So I think there was a lot of confusion, especially when I started Who's Your Daddy, about what does it mean for, my father to not have been there? What does it mean specifically to, as, as a Black child growing up and hearing so many negative narratives about not having a father, and how that's going to negatively impact me as a Black girl growing up, right? So it's just like, what I feel is that I've gotten from underneath the bullshit a little bit, not entirely, because there's so many other narratives I got to work myself through, but I don't feel like I'm laboring in these illusions anymore. And once you come out of that, you start to see everything so clearly and differently, and it's not personal, and that's what I feel, is that sense of, it's not about me. My father's choice wasn't about me. if anything, he thought he was making the best choice for my livelihood. And so in that regard, I have to sort of be grateful for him, because he recognized that he would not be able to give. And so also too, just the recognition that people are telling you the truth about themselves, and we can decide to like pay attention and really listen to that, or we can just labor under our own illusions and pretend that they've never told us who they are. And so there's something about that where it's like, slow down and really take your time to like hear what people have to say and what they have to offer. And it's not about me. So I'm learning to take those layers away where I feel like I'm responsible for everyone else's behavior, and I have to be the better person or a good girl or perform exceptional Blackness in order to receive my rewards. And all of that just feels, it's just not working anymore, and it's dissolved. Sometimes it comes up and I can see it and be like, oh, there you are, but it's not me. And I don't need to hook and identify to it as I have before. And so I feel freer. I feel like I feel like I'm in the authority of myself. Like I am the occupant of my body, of my soul. And that feels good. Like I feel in charge.
That's an excellent answer. That's really powerful. So that's about it for us. Any last thoughts that you want to leave us with? Putting you on the spot here, I know.
Well, I just say, like, find your own sort of provocative questions and let them lead you down your own journey towards, deeper recognition, towards self-healing. Because Who's Your Daddy, it actually started off as like a tongue-in-cheek title. We were gonna change it. But after going through all of the different iterations of this book, Who's Your Daddy just felt like, it felt playful, it felt right on, but it also resonates on so many levels. And so I just want us all to figure out who's your daddy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dara Wier, for joining us this evening as our In Conversation as we celebrated Arisa White's new publication of Who's Your Daddy. Who's Your Daddy is available from Gibson's Bookstore, and we are happy for in-store browsing, curbside pickup, or shipping. Thank you so much for the two of you for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much.
Have a great night, everybody.
Good night, Arisa.
Bye, Dara.
Bye.